The discovery, Zora had never felt fear before. As a highly advanced alien, she was trained to stay calm, collected, and focused on the mission. She had seen countless worlds, interacted with many species, and studied them all. But this mission to Earth, the strange blue planet in the far reaches of the galaxy, was different. There was something about humans that intrigued her. Their unpredictability, their emotions, their very essence. It all fascinated her. Her mission was simple: observe, study, and return home with data. Yet, as she stood in the sterile white lab, staring at the small glass container in front of her, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The human scientists had assured her that the task was harmless. They had provided her with a small vial containing a pheromone, something that they claimed would help her understand human attraction and connection. She wasn't sure why they were so eager for her to experience this feeling, but she trusted the data. "Just a small amount," Dr. Jason had said, smiling at her. His human smile was different from the cold, analytical expressions she was used to seeing from other scientists. There was warmth in it, and that warmth was beginning to stir something deep inside her. Zora felt a small pang in her chest but dismissed it quickly. She had no time for emotions. She took the vial in her delicate hand and studied it. The liquid inside shimmered faintly, like it held a hidden power. Zora couldn't quite explain why, but she had an odd feeling about it. With a deep breath, she opened the vial and carefully ingested a single drop of the substance. At first, nothing happened. She waited, watching the humans around her, noting their reactions. Dr. Jason was talking to a colleague, seemingly unaware of what was about to unfold. Zora closed her eyes for a moment, feeling a shift in the air. A strange warmth flooded her senses, and her heartbeat quickened, something she had never experienced before. Her eyes fluttered open, and everything seemed sharper. Colors were brighter, sounds were more intense. And then, there was him, Dr. Jason. She had studied humans for years, but she had never experienced this kind of reaction. It was as if something inside her was awakening, something she didn't fully understand. His presence filled the room, and the connection was immediate, intense. It felt like the world had shifted, and she was drawn to him, her thoughts clouded by a powerful attraction. She tried to pull away, but it was like an invisible force had locked her in place. Her pulse raced, and her body, for the first time, felt warm in a way she couldn't control. She focused, attempting to block out the strange new feelings, but it was impossible. The attraction she felt for Dr. Jason was overwhelming. She wanted to approach him, to speak to him, but she stayed rooted to the spot. Zora took a step back, trying to regain control of herself. She had to analyze the situation. It was part of her training to remain objective, to understand the science behind every reaction. She was a scientist after all. But no matter how much she tried to focus on her mission, her thoughts kept drifting back to him. Dr. Jason glanced up from his conversation and caught her gaze. Zora quickly looked away, but it was too late. He was already walking toward her. His eyes were filled with concern, but there was something else there, something that made her stomach tighten. His presence was magnetic, pulling her in, making it impossible for her to think clearly. "Zora," he said, his voice soft yet firm. "Are you okay? You look different." Zora struggled to speak. She was aware that her body was reacting in ways it never had before. She had never been so aware of another being, especially not a human. The pheromone, she realized, was doing something to her, something beyond her understanding. She had never been so vulnerable. She had never felt so exposed. "I'm fine," she managed to say, her voice betraying her. There was no way she could explain what was happening. How could she? How could she explain that the simple human pheromone was having such an effect on her? She wasn't sure herself, but the pull was undeniable. Dr. Jason didn't seem to understand. He stepped closer, his eyes scanning her face. "You don't look fine," he said gently. "Maybe you should sit down." Zora took a step back, trying to regain control of herself. "No," she said, shaking her head. I just need to focus. I need to complete my mission. Her mind was racing now. She couldn't afford to let this distraction ruin everything. She had to remain strong, detached, but the more she tried to push the feelings away, the stronger they became. Dr. Jason didn't move. He continued to look at her with that concerned expression. "What's going on, Zora?" he asked, his voice low but filled with an intensity she wasn't used to. "You're not acting like yourself." Zora took another deep breath. She had to calm down. But as she looked into his eyes, she felt herself losing grip on everything she had worked so hard for. The attraction was too powerful, and it was growing stronger by the second. She needed to break away, to escape, but something inside her refused to let her go. The pheromone had done its work. She was trapped. Her thoughts were a jumble of confusion and emotion, but one thing was clear. She couldn't ignore this. Not anymore. Zora had a choice to make. Continue the mission and ignore this powerful attraction, or give in to the feelings and risk everything. She didn't know what the right choice was, but one thing was certain. She would never be the same again. The pheromone had unlocked something in her, and now she couldn't escape it, not without facing the truth of what it had done to her. Unexpected desires. Zora woke up with a start. The events of the previous day still swirling in her mind. The human pheromone had affected her in ways she couldn't begin to understand. Her head throbbed with confusion, and her thoughts were clouded by a singular, undeniable truth. She was drawn to Dr. Jason in a way that no amount of logic could explain. The pheromone had made its mark, and she was powerless to stop the attraction that pulsed within her chest. As she stood in the observation room of the research facility, Zora could feel the heavy weight of her mission pressing down on her. Her purpose was clear: gather data, study the humans, and return to her home planet. But now, it was all muddled. The mission, the data, everything. It felt insignificant in comparison to the burning desire she couldn't shake. She tried to focus on the screens in front of her, monitoring the various research experiments. But it was no use. Every movement, every sound, every breath felt amplified. It was like she could feel Dr. Jason's presence even though he was miles away. Zora tried to push the feelings aside, telling herself that she was an alien, a scientist, and emotions had no place in her work. But the pull was undeniable. She had felt connections before, but never like this. This was different. It wasn't just physical attraction. It was as if their very beings were meant to intertwine. Her fingers hovered over the data panels, but she couldn't focus. A sharp sound broke through the haze of her thoughts, the door opening. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Dr. Jason's presence filled the room like a force of nature, and it hit her with the same intensity as before. Her body responded instinctively, her pulse quickening, her breath becoming shallow. "Zora." Dr. Jason's voice was calm but laced with concern. "You've been avoiding me." She turned slowly, her heart racing in her chest. She could feel the heat rise in, her face, her body betraying her. "I've been busy," she managed to say, her voice trembling slightly, betraying the lie. Dr. Jason took a step forward, his gaze never leaving her. There was a glint of curiosity in his eyes, but there was something else too, something that Zora couldn't quite place. "You're not yourself," he said softly. "I've never seen you like this." Zora felt the walls inside her crumble. She wanted to deny it, to tell him that she was fine, that nothing had changed, but she knew better. The pheromone had made it impossible for her to hide what she was feeling. It wasn't just her physical attraction to him. It was the way she couldn't stop thinking about him, even when she wasn't near him. "I'm fine," she said, forcing the words out, but they felt empty. She had no idea what to say anymore. Her emotions were all over the place. The logical part of her screamed that this was a mistake, that she had to regain control. But the part of her that had been awakened by the pheromone wasn't listening. Dr. Jason's eyes softened, and he took another step closer, until he was standing just a few feet away from her. "Zora," he said again, his voice gentle but firm. "What's going on? You've been distant. You're not acting like yourself." The space between them felt charged. crackling with an energy that Zora couldn't deny. She could feel her heartbeat pounding in her ears, could feel the pull between them growing stronger. Her chest tightened as she tried to fight it, tried to step back, but her body refused to obey. "I'm not." Zora paused, trying to find the right words, but nothing came. She wanted to push him away, to stay focused on her mission, but the more she tried to resist, the more she wanted to surrender to this feeling, to the human who had unknowingly unlocked something deep within her. She didn't know what to do, how to fight this connection that was rapidly consuming her. Dr. Jason stepped even closer, his presence overwhelming her senses. "Zora," he whispered, his voice ice low. "I know something's wrong. You don't have to hide it from me." His words were soft, but they were like a jolt of electricity coursing through her body. Zora's mind raced. She had always been in control. She had always known how to keep her emotions at bay. But now, everything was out of her hands. The pheromone had unleashed something deep inside her, and the more she resisted, the more intense it became. Zora clenched her fists, her mind warring with her body. She couldn't let this happen. She couldn't let herself become distracted by these feelings. There was too much at stake. Her mission, the future of her people. But Dr. Jason, he was standing so close now, his eyes filled with concern and something else. Something Zora couldn't identify. She could feel the pull, like an invisible force drawing her toward him. She had always prided herself on her rationality, her ability to control her emotions, but in this moment she was completely helpless. The attraction was overwhelming, and she couldn't deny it any longer. "Dr. Jason," Zora began, her voice shaky. I can't explain what's happening to me." Jason reached out, gently taking her hand in his, sending a jolt of warmth through her. "You don't need to explain," he said softly, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "I'm here, Zora. Whatever's going on, we can figure it out together." The words should have been comforting, should have calmed her, but instead they made everything worse. The intensity of her feelings surged once more, and she found herself drawn to him, her body moving against her will. She felt a surge of emotion, a flood of longing and desire that she had never experienced before. Zora closed her eyes, fighting to regain control. This wasn't her. She wasn't supposed to feel this way. But no matter how hard she tried to push it away, she could feel herself losing the battle. The pheromone had taken root deep within her, and there was no turning back now. "I don't want to be like this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But I can't stop it." Dr. Jason's hand tightened around hers, his expression softening. "You don't have to fight it, Zora," he said, his voice filled with tenderness. "We'll figure this out. Together." Zora wanted to pull away. She wanted to push him out of her mind and focus on the mission. But in that moment, all she could think about was him. She wasn't sure if she was falling for him or if the pheromone was controlling her, but it didn't matter anymore. The lines between duty and desire had blurred beyond recognition. And now, there was no turning back. The experiment gone wrong. Zora paced in the quiet of her private quarters, the dim light from the control panels casting long shadows across the room. The weight of what was happening to her was suffocating. The pheromone's effects had grown exponentially since the first encounter with Dr. Jason. It was no longer just a feeling, no longer just attraction. It was a hunger, a need that consumed every part of her being. She had always been in control, always above these primitive urges, but now she was drowning in them. Her body trembled as the waves of desire surged through her, pulling her thoughts away from the mission, away from everything she had once held dear. The pheromone had done something to her, something irreversible. Her training, her focus, everything was slipping through her fingers like sand. She couldn't ignore the way her heart raced every time she thought of Dr. Jason, couldn't block out the image of his warm, concerned eyes. She had come here to study humans, to gather data that would help her species. But now she was the one who was lost. She had never intended for this to happen. She had always prided herself on her ability to remain objective, detached, and rational. But Dr. Jason had shattered that, like glass breaking under pressure. His presence had cracked open something deep inside her, and now she didn't put the pieces back together. A sharp knock on the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. She froze, her heart leaping in her chest. She knew who it was. There was no need to check. It was him. Dr. Jason. Her pulse quickened, and she forced herself to breathe steadily. She couldn't let him see how much she was struggling. She couldn't let him know that the simple touch of his hand, the softness in his voice, was enough to bring her to the edge of complete surrender. "Zora?" His voice came through the door, gentle but persistent. "I need to talk to you. Open up." For a moment, Zora hesitated. She wanted to push him away, to hide from him and from herself. She wanted to be strong again, to regain control. But the part of her that had been awakened by the pheromone, the part that longed for him, overpowered all rational thought. With a shaky breath, she opened the door. Dr. Jason stood there, looking concerned but calm. His dark eyes studied her, taking in her disheveled appearance and the tension radiating off her. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. There was no escaping him now. "You've been avoiding me," he said, his voice softer than usual. "What's going on, Zora? I don't understand. You're not acting like yourself." Zora clenched her fists, trying to steady herself. How could she explain what was happening? How could she explain that the attraction she felt for him was not just a passing impulse, but something that had taken root deep within her, something she couldn't escape? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Dr. Jason took a step closer, his eyes never leaving her. "I know something's wrong," he continued, his voice filled with quiet urgency. "You don't have to keep hiding it. Whatever this is, we can figure it out." Zora's chest tightened, the internal battle within her raging. She wanted to pull away, to tell him to leave, to pretend that everything was fine, but deep down she knew that wasn't an option anymore. She had never felt like this before, never been so vulnerable, so exposed. It terrified her. And yet, there was a part of her that didn't want to fight it anymore. The pheromone had done its work. It had broken down the walls she had built around herself, and now she could no longer deny the pull between them. But she had to remain strong. She had to stick to the mission. The mission came first. "I'm fine," she said, the words feeling hollow as they left her lips. "It's nothing." But even as she spoke, she could feel the tension building between them, the undeniable connection drawing them closer. Dr. Jason didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes. He stepped forward again, his hand reaching for her arm. His touch was gentle, but it sent a shock of warmth through her skin. "No, Zora," he said quietly, his voice like a caress. "I know it's not nothing. You're not fine." Zora's breath caught in her throat as his fingers brushed against her skin. The touch was electric, sending waves of heat coursing through her body. She could feel her control slipping further away, the rational part of her mind fading into the background. I can't do this," Zora whispered, shaking her head as she pulled back from him, her hands trembling. "I can't be here, like this." The words were meant to be firm, to end the conversation, but they came out weak, unsure. She felt her pulse race as she backed away, every step away from him like a small battle within her. She knew she should run. She knew she should escape before it was too late. But it was all red, and he took a step closer again. "Zora, I don't know what's happening, but I'm not going to leave you alone. Whatever this is, we'll figure it out too late." Dr. Jason's expression softened her. Zora's chest tightened at his words, and her heart began to race. His care, his presence, it was too much. She wanted to push him away, but it was like the force between them was too strong to ignore. "I can't stay here," she whispered again, her voice barely audible. "I can't stay close to you. Not like this." His hand reached out again, but this time Zora didn't pull away. The moment their hands touched, it was like everything she had tried to bury came rushing to the surface. The intensity of the pheromones' effects, the pull she felt toward him, was more than she could handle. Dr. Jason's voice was steady but filled with a hint of concern. "Zora, Before he could finish, Zora's instincts took over. She closed the distance between them, her body moving of its own accord. Their lips met, and the world seemed to stop. There was no thinking, no mission, no responsibilities, just the overwhelming connection, the magnetic force that had been building between them since the moment they met. It was a kiss born of confusion, of longing, of a need neither of them fully understood. But it was real. And as Zora pulled away, gasping for breath, she realized that the pheromone had done more than just awaken a desire. It had bound them together in a way that neither of them could escape. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean for this to happen." But even as she spoke, she knew it was too late. The experiment had gone wrong, and there was no going back now, the escape plan. The weight of what had just happened hung heavy in the air, and Zora felt suffocated by it. The kiss, the connection, it was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The pheromones' effects were no longer just an inconvenience. They were a force that was altering her very sense of self. She felt as if she was losing her grip on reality. The mission, her purpose, everything she had come here for, seemed insignificant compared to the overwhelming pull she felt toward Dr. Jason. Zora paced the small room, her heart racing. How could she have let it go this far? She had come to Earth for knowledge, for scientific discovery, not to fall into the chaotic web of human emotions. The alien part of her screamed for control, for logic, but the human part of her, driven by the pheromone, yearned for something far more complicated and dangerous. She stopped in front of the window, staring out at the swirling clouds beyond the research facility. The Earth below seemed so vast, so full of life, yet Zora felt as though she was trapped in a small cage. Every part of her mind screamed that she needed to leave, to get away from Dr. Jason and this uncontrollable situation. But where could she go? Her mission had already been compromised. There was no going back. Her superiors would find out what had happened, and they wouldn't be pleased. They didn't understand the concept of emotions like humans did. They viewed it as a weakness. She had been trained to suppress everything, emotions, desires, attachments. But now, she couldn't stop herself from feeling, from wanting. She had to find a way out of this before it consumed her completely. With a deep breath, she turned away from the window and paced back to the table. The data from her mission was scattered across the surface, scientific notes, reports on human biology, and an analysis of the pheromone. But it was all useless now. None of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was Dr. Jason and the strange, unrelenting attraction that had taken root inside her. The door opened, and Zora froze. She didn't need to look up to know who it was. Dr. Jason had followed her. He always did. He had been persistent ever since the first signs of the pheromones' effects. Zora had tried to push him away, to keep him at arm's length, but it was futile. The pheromone had intertwined them in a way that was beyond her control. "You're planning something," Dr. Jason said quietly, his voice gentle but firm. He knew her too well, and Zora could see the concern in his eyes. "You've been distant. You've been avoiding me. What's going on, Zora?" Zora turned, her back straight, her posture rigid as she faced him. She had to be strong. She couldn't let him see how vulnerable she truly was. "I need to leave," she said, her voice sharp and decisive. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. She couldn't keep hiding from the truth. "I need to go back to my planet. This mission has gone too far." Dr. Jason's eyes darkened with concern, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding. "Zora, you can't just leave. Not like this. You're not yourself." "I'm not who I was before," she replied, her voice low. "And I can't stay here. I'm too compromised. This connection between us, it's not just a distraction anymore. It's dangerous." She struggled to keep the tremor out of her voice, but it was impossible. Every word was coded in the uncertainty she couldn't escape. You think it's just the pheromone? Dr. Jason asked, stepping closer to her. His gaze was intense, his expression unreadable. Zora, this is real. I can see it in your eyes. I feel it too. Zora's heart skipped a beat. No, she whispered, stepping back, trying to put distance between them. You don't understand. I came here to study humans, not to become one of them. I can't let myself be swayed by this. This isn't me. I have a duty. Dr. Jason's voice softened, a sadness creeping into his eyes. And what about your duty to yourself? Zora, you're not just some alien mission. You're not just a data collector. You're a person, and this, he motioned between them. This is real. I know you feel it. Don't shut it out. His words hit Zora harder than she expected. She had spent so long pushing away emotions, telling herself that they didn't matter, that logic and duty were all that mattered. But now, in the presence of Dr. Jason's unwavering sincerity, her walls were starting to crumble. You don't understand, she whispered, her voice breaking. I can't stay here. If I stay, I'll be a danger to both of us. I'm not just a researcher anymore, Jason. I'm something else. Something that can't belong here. Zora turned away, unable to face him any longer. Her emotions were too raw, too exposed. She had to leave. She had to escape the pull, the need for him that was eating her alive. It was the only way to protect him. But Dr. Jason wasn't done. He crossed the room in 3 swift steps, standing directly behind her. His presence loomed like an immovable force, and for the first time since their mission began, Zora felt truly trapped. You think leaving will fix this? His voice was low, barely above a whisper. You think you can just walk away from what's happening between us? Zora turned back to face him, her eyes filled with confusion and pain. What do you want from me, Dr. Jason? Her voice was thick with emotion. I'm not supposed to feel this. I'm not supposed to want you. I can't keep pretending that I'm in control. Dr. Jason reached out, his hand gentle but firm as he cupped her face. Then stop pretending. Stop fighting it, Zora. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to run away. Whatever this is, we'll face it together. The words should have been comforting, should have given her the strength to stay, but they only made it harder. The escape plan she had so carefully constructed was slipping through her fingers like water, and with every second she stood there, the pull toward Dr. Jason grew stronger. She knew what she had to do. She had to leave. She had to stop this before it consumed her entirely. But deep down, part of her knew that it was already too late. The moment she had let her guard down, the moment she had let herself feel, everything had changed. And now, there was no turning back. The final choice. The hum of the facility's air systems filled the room, but Zora could barely hear it. Her mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. The choice she had been running from, avoiding for days, was now unavoidable. She stood at the window, looking out at the earth below, the soft blue of the planet contrasting with the chaos in her chest. Leaving seemed like the only logical option. It was the only way she could escape the crushing pull she felt toward Dr. Jason, the pheromone's grip on her mind and body tightening with each passing moment. But something inside her, a deeper, more primal instinct, told her that running wasn't the solution. She couldn't outrun this. She couldn't escape the truth. But would staying be any better? Could she let herself surrender to the emotions she'd spent her entire life avoiding? Was it worth risking everything for something so human, so raw? The mission was clear. Her people needed the data she had gathered. Her home planet needed her to succeed. But what about her? What did she need? A sudden knock at the door snapped her from her thoughts. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Dr. Jason. Always showing up when she least expected it. Always there despite the distance she tried to create between them. Zora stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. She had already decided that she needed to leave to return to the safety of her mission and forget the chaos of the emotions that had clouded her judgment. But now, facing him, everything felt different. Every fiber of her being screamed to run, yet the rest of her, the part that had been buried deep inside for so long, wanted to stay, wanted to face whatever came next. The door opened slowly. Dr. Jason stepped in, his expression a mix of concern and something else. Something Zora wasn't ready to confront. She couldn't look at him. Not now. Not when everything in her was falling apart. "I've been waiting for you to make a choice, Zora," he said, his voice low but steady. "You don't have to do this alone." Zora clenched her fists, her pulse pounding in her ears. "I can't stay," she said, her voice trembling despite her attempts to sound firm. "You don't understand. I came here to study you, to study humans, not to feel like this, not to want something I can't have." Dr. Jason's silence was deafening. He didn't try to argue. He didn't need to. He just waited, his presence filling the room, as though he was giving her space to breathe, to make her decision. "Zora," he began softly, stepping closer. "I don't know how much longer I can pretend that this is just some experiment, that you're just a subject to study. I can feel it too. I know what's happening between us." She felt the weight of his words, their honesty. His words weren't born of a scientist's curiosity or a fascination with an alien being. They were born of a real connection, a connection that neither of them could ignore anymore. It was the truth. And in that truth, Zora felt something break inside her, a part of her that had been locked away for so long. "I'm not asking you to choose me," Dr. Jason continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I am asking you to choose something. Choose yourself. You can't keep running from this, from us." Zora shook her head. "I don't know how to let this happen. I don't know how to let myself feel this way. I've never been like this. I've always been in control. But now, I'm not sure I even know who I am anymore." His hand reached out, gently taking hers. "I'm not asking you to be someone you're not, Zora. I'm asking you to be honest with yourself, to face what you're feeling, not as a mission, but as a person. What do you want?" Zora's chest tightened. The simple question was enough to send her world spinning. What did she want? For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zora had to stop and consider it. She had spent so much of her life focusing on duty, on logic, on being the perfect agent for her people. She had buried her own desires beneath layers of control, of duty. But now, in the face of Dr. Jason's unwavering sincerity, she couldn't keep lying to herself. What did she want? The answer felt like it was there, just out of reach. She wanted to stay. She wanted to explore this connection, to understand the emotions that had been awakened inside her. But that meant abandoning her mission, her duty to her species. Could she do that? Tears welled in her eyes, and Zora quickly blinked them away. She couldn't break down now. She couldn't afford to be weak. But weakness felt inevitable when faced with a choice like this. Dr. Jason stepped closer, his face softening with compassion. "Zora, you don't have to choose between duty and happiness. You can find a way to have both. You've spent so long trying to fit into a mold, trying to be something you're not. Maybe it's time to let go and trust yourself." The sincerity in his eyes was too much. Zora felt a shift deep inside her, like the weight of the world had been lifted just a little. She took a deep breath, finally meeting his gaze. There, in his eyes, she saw the same vulnerability, the same hope. He was offering her something she had never allowed herself to have, a choice. She exhaled slowly, her body finally relaxing as she made her decision. "I can't promise I'll have all the answers," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But I'm willing to try. For us. For me." Dr. Jason's eyes lit up, a soft smile playing at the corner of his lips. "That's all I'm asking for." Zora felt a weight lift from her chest, a lightness that she hadn't realized she had been missing. For the first time, she didn't feel like she had to carry the entire universe on her shoulders. She could make a choice for herself, and that was enough. It was time to stop running. Time to embrace what was real. Time to face the future, whatever it might bring. And maybe, just maybe, she could learn what it meant to live, not as a scientist, not as an alien, but as a person. Someone who had a future beyond the mission. Together, Zora and Dr. Jason stood, the world outside their window stretching out before them. A future, uncertain but full of possibility, waiting to be written. The reckoning, the stars outside the research facility window twinkled like distant, unreachable promises. Zora stood before the glass, her reflection merging with the infinite expanse beyond. She had made her choice, but now the consequences of that decision were beginning to catch up with her. Dr. Jason's presence still lingered in the room, a constant reminder of the bond they had forged. A bond that had once seemed impossible, yet now felt undeniable. She had chosen to stay, to risk everything. But as the days passed, it became clear that her decision was not without consequence. The alien authorities were watching her every move. She had already sent them a report, detailing her findings about the humans and the pheromone she had ingested, but now her communication seemed distant, almost forced. The transmission was standard procedure, a report she was expected to send back to her people, but she knew it was only a matter of time before they questioned her sudden shift in behavior, her abandonment of the mission's original intent. Her feelings for Dr. Jason weren't just a deviation from her work. They were a betrayal of everything she had once believed in. Zora felt her heart race, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and fear. She had been trained to avoid emotional attachments at all costs. They were seen as a weakness, a vulnerability that would only hinder the mission. And now, here she was, deeply connected to a human, someone who didn't belong in her world, someone whose fate was so intertwined with hers that she couldn't imagine life without him. But the alien authorities wouldn't understand. To them, emotions were a flaw, a distraction. They would see her as a failure, a tool that had been corrupted by the very thing she was meant to study. Zora turned away from the window, her hands trembling slightly as she looked at the small communicator on the table. The blinking light indicated a new message. She knew what it was. A summons. Her superiors wanted answers, and they wouldn't wait long. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts, and she immediately knew it was Dr. Jason. He was always there, always keeping watch, ever present in the wake of the chaos she had brought into their lives. "Zora?" His voice came through the door, gentle but laced with concern. "Are you okay?" Zora didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced back at the communicator. The message was from her people. It was time to face the reckoning. She opened the door, and Dr. Jason stepped in, his gaze searching her face. "What's going on? You've been quiet today." Zora took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts before speaking. "I've received a message from my people," she said, her voice steady but hollow. "They want answers." Dr. Jason's brow furrowed in confusion. "Answers? About what?" Zora closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of the situation sinking in. "About everything. About the pheromone. About the mission. About me." His eyes softened with understanding, but there was something else in his gaze now, something darker, as if he sensed the danger in the air. "What are they going to do?" "I don't know," Zora admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "But I know they won't accept this. They won't accept me. Not like this. I've betrayed them." Dr. Jason stepped closer, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "You didn't betray anyone, Zora. You're not a failure. You made a choice, and it was your choice to make." Zora looked up at him, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. "But I wasn't supposed to make this choice. I wasn't supposed to let myself feel. I wasn't supposed to care about you." The words hit him harder than she expected. Dr. Jason didn't move, his expression unreadable. But Zora could see the truth in his eyes. He knew what this meant. He knew that, by staying, she was risking everything she had worked for, everything she had been trained to protect. "Zora," he said softly, his voice steady, "you don't have to face this alone. Whatever happens next, we'll deal with it together." She closed her eyes, taking in the warmth of his touch. There was comfort in his words, but there was also fear. A fear that had been growing inside her since the moment she had allowed herself to give in to her feelings. A fear that, no matter what she did, the consequences of her actions would be too great to escape. The communicator buzzed again, louder this time, demanding her attention. Zora knew that, with the press of a button, she could answer it. She could give them the explanation they wanted. She could comply with the mission, deny everything that had happened between her and Dr. Jason, and go back to being the cold, emotionless alien she had always been. But as she stood there, facing the man who had become her anchor in this chaotic world, she realized she couldn't go back. She couldn't pretend anymore. The choice had already been made, and it had been made by her, not by the mission, not by her people, by her. With a deep breath, Zora pressed the butt on. The screen flickered to life, revealing the cold faces of her superiors. Their eyes were sharp, calculating, their expressions betraying nothing of the disappointment or anger they must have been feeling. "Zora," one of them began, his voice clipped, "you've failed to meet expectations. Your behavior has deviated significantly from the mission's objectives. We demand an explanation." Zora's heart hammered in her chest, but her voice was steady as she met their gaze. "I am aware of the deviation. I have made a decision that was not in line with the original mission." The silence on the other end of the line was palpable. The tension thickened, and Zora could feel the weight of her choices pressing down on her. "You've chosen to abandon your duty," the voice continued, colder now. "Do you understand the consequences of your actions?" Zora didn't hesitate. "I do, but I can't go back. I found something here. Someone who is more important than any mission. I will not sacrifice what I've learned about myself, about us, for the sake of a mission that has already changed me beyond recognition." The words hung in the air, and for a long moment there was no response. She had spoken the truth, and it had shattered everything. Then the voice came again, but this time there was a note of finality. "You will be dealt with accordingly, Zora. Prepare yourself for the consequences. You are no longer welcome among us." Zora's heart sank, but she didn't flinch. She had made her choice, and whatever happened next, she would face it with Dr. Jason by her side. The screen went dark. Dr. Jason stood beside her, his presence solid and unwavering. He didn't say anything at first. He didn't need to. They both knew what had just transpired. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and consequences. But in that moment, Zora felt a strange sense of peace. She had chosen to follow her heart, even if it meant defying everything she had been taught. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The resolution. The silence that followed the disconnection from her superiors was suffocating. The weight of their words, their finality, pressed down on Zora like a crushing tide. And yet, in the deepest corners of her mind, there was a flicker of something new, something freeing. She had chosen. Not the mission, not her species, not the expectations of her people, but herself. She turned away from the dark screen of the communicator, her heart still racing from the encounter. But the storm within her, the one that had raged for so long, was beginning to settle. It wasn't over, nothing ever truly ended, but she could breathe again. Dr. Jason didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His presence in the room was enough. The weight of the universe had shifted in that brief moment when she had made her declaration. The consequences were now inevitable, but there was a strange peace in the decision. She had chosen what was real. "I guess that's it then," Zora said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She turned to face Dr. Jason, finally allowing herself to look into his eyes without the weight of hesitation. without the need to protect herself. I'm no longer part of their world. Dr. Jason stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers. It was a simple gesture, but in that moment, it meant everything. Zora, he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. You're not alone anymore. Whatever happens, we face it together. Her fingers curled into his, and she allowed herself to feel the warmth of his touch, the kind of warmth she had never allowed herself to experience before. In his hand, she didn't feel like an alien. She didn't feel like a failure. She just felt human. And it was the first time in so long that she had felt something real, something true. But even as she stood there holding his hand, she knew the path ahead would not be easy. Her people would not just let her go. The galaxy was vast, and the politics that governed it were harsh. She had turned her back on them, and they would retaliate in ways she couldn't even begin to imagine. I don't know what comes next, Zora admitted, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know if they'll come for us, but I can't go back to pretending to be someone I'm not. Dr. Jason's gaze softened, and he brushed a lock of her hair from her face. Then we don't have to. We'll build something new. Together. Zora's heart swelled at his words. She had spent so long fighting against her emotions, against her humanity. But here, with him, she realized that her humanity was her strength. It was the thing that had always set her apart from the cold, calculating mission she had been trained to follow. She wasn't just a tool. She wasn't just a pawn in a larger game. She was Zora. And for the first time, she was willing to fight for herself. The door to the room slid open with a soft hiss, and Zora tensed, instinctively stepping in front of Dr. Jason. She wasn't sure what she was expecting, but she knew the consequences of her actions were about to come crashing down on them. But when the figure in the doorway stepped forward, it wasn't an alien enforcer or an official from her people. It was a human security officer, his face a mask of uncertainty. Dr. Jason, Zora, the man said, his voice wavering slightly. There's a message. They've been tracking your transmissions. It's not good. Zora's heart sank. She knew it was coming. The price of defying her people had arrived, and there was no escaping it now. What message? Dr. Jason asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. The officer hesitated for a moment before handing them a small, secure device. It's from the Federation, he said quietly. They're issuing an ultimatum. Zora took the device, her fingers trembling as she activated it. A cold, digital face appeared on the screen. It was her superior, the one who had reprimanded her earlier, his expression even colder now. Zora, you are a traitor to your people, the voice came through, sharp and accusing. Your actions have endangered everything we stand for. You will return to your post immediately, or we will take actions to ensure you can never return to the galaxy. Zora's grip tightened around the device, but she refused to flinch. This was it, the moment when everything would be decided. The face on the screen continued. If you choose to stay with the human, to abandon your duty, we will consider it an act of war. There is no place for weakness in the Federation. You have until sunrise to comply. The message ended abruptly, leaving a heavy silence in the room. The words hung in the air like a noose, waiting to tighten around their necks. Zora's mind raced. What did this mean? Was she truly ready to fight for this new life she had chosen? Was Dr. Jason ready? She could hear the distant hum of the facility's security systems, and the realization hit her hard. They were running out of time. Dr. Jason stepped forward, his voice firm as he turned to her. Zora, we've already made our choice. We face this together, whatever it means. We can't go back now. Zora looked into his eyes, seeing the same resolve there that she had seen from the very beginning. In that moment, she knew that she wasn't alone. The Federation, with all its power and control, could threaten them, could try to tear them apart, but it couldn't break the bond they shared. Together, she whispered, her voice filled with a strength she had never known she possessed. She had chosen, and now she would fight for it. The door slid closed behind them, and Zora and Dr. Jason walked toward the unknown, side by side. Whatever came next, they would face it as equals, no longer just an alien and a human, but something new, something they would define together. And as the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, they knew one thing for certain: their journey had only just begun. The end. Enjoyed the story? Like it and subscribe for more.